La Lanterna, a spotlight in Italian football, is a podcast that dives into the beautiful game seen from the eyes of two fans from the oldest team in Italy's point of view. My name is Fabrizio Cardone, Canadian and Genovese, together with my friend Matt Killen, an American-born and Genoa fan. Every week, we'll tell you all you need to know about the only team you need to know about, Genoa CFC. Plus, we'll have guests and provide updates from around the magical world of Italian football. Benvenuti alla Lanterna podcast. This is Fabrizio here from Toronto with my best friend.
Oh, yeah, Matt. That's my cue. Sorry. There's two of us on today, so it's like, who are we tossing this over to?
That's true. So we're switching things around because instead of having our guest on the second half, magic happens and we have a guest in the first half. And you're going to ask yourselves, whoa, what's going on? What's this big difference? Well, thanks to social media, maybe you could call me stalker or whatever you want to call it, but I found this gentleman, essentially. We'll let him describe where he's from and whatnot, but essentially that I'm supposing he's not a Genoa fan, but he might very well have become one that went to the match at against Reggina. So actually, let's jump directly to him and introduce our guest, Alex from
Manchester. Yeah, my name's Alex. I'm from Manchester in England, UK. And yeah, I was at the Luigi Ferraris. Yeah. Don't want to get that wrong. Yeah, I was there on Friday night for the game against Reggina. Obviously, really big game for Genoa. I've just sort of literally got back from Italy today. So if I look and sound a little bit tired, I got back from the airport about half an hour ago.
Hey, listen, the trip from wherever you were in Italy, even though if you were down at the bottom, all the way to England is not as far as if you were traveling all the way to New York or to Toronto as if it was for us.
It's still
that is very true.
It is still a trip. Yeah, that's true.
That is true.
I guess before you jump into the match, first of all, thank you for joining at our podcast. Tell us a little bit more about yourself, like who you are. You said you're from Manchester, but what brought you to Italy and what brought you to the match?
Yeah, so I'm a football journalist. I'm freelancing at the minute. I am a Manchester City fan since I was a kid. So before the money, before anyone asks. And yeah, so I'm a football journalist, written about City for Manchester Evening News for a while. But I've always kind of had, the last few years, I've had quite a sort of interest in Italian football and Spanish football in particular. And that kind of started when I went to a game at Napoli in 2018. That's part of what this trip was as well. I was perhaps unfortunate enough to be at the Diego Armando Maradona on Sunday for the defeat to Milan.
Wow.
But yeah, I thought with this trip, I'd build in a few days in Genoa. I've heard quite nice things about the city. The stadium itself has been on my kind of bucket list, as it were, for a few years now. It's quite a unique ground in Italy, what with it, the sort of rectangular shape, kind of more of a kind of British style, I guess, for lack of a better term. So I wanted to go to that, heard the atmosphere was good. When I sort of planned it, it wasn't that long ago. I hadn't really looked at the league tables. I knew that Genoa were in Serie B because I knew they got relegated last season. And then after I bought the ticket, I saw that, it's quite a big game. They're second in the league. A win's going to, put them in a really good position to secure that automatic promotion. And they're playing a team in Reggina who, while they've been in pretty atrocious form since Christmas, they are still fighting for a playoff spot.
Right.
So it kind of just aligned really well, really. And then, sort of the stars aligned. It's a record attendance for the season. Atmosphere was incredible. And I just had a really good time. And then obviously, I met you guys on Twitter and here we are. So I guess I do quite like going to matches across Europe and in Italy in particular. And that's basically what took me to Genoa.
So as you said, stars were aligned in order for you to go to Genova. So you are correct. That's what we define it as well. Like the only, for lack of better terms, is the only British style stadium, almost sold out. As you mentioned, it was about 31,000 attending. So the stars were aligned, choosing Genoa over others, also because it was on your bucket list. Tell us a little bit more, not only, I guess, the match, whatever you can say about the match. I know you mentioned that you did a little bit of digging, understanding who were the two teams, and I much appreciate that. But also the atmosphere, the feeling, the fans. What did you get from that match?
Yeah, well, I think when basically, as an English football fan, there's not a lot of atmosphere at Premier League matches anymore. Unfortunately, over the decades, kind of the ticket prices pricing fans out, complete bans on flags, pyro, tifo, that kind of thing.
Wow.
So I always quite like to go to matches in Italy and be quite close to the curva, or I guess there's technically not a curva at Genoa, but where the ultras are, just to kind of get that atmosphere.
Yeah, sorry, just to jump in, because it's the only British style stadium, it's the only one in Italy not called curva, but gradinata.
Gradinata. That was kind of the first question. Where did you sit? Were you at the Distinti? Do you remember?
I can't remember the exact name, but I did a bit of digging, and I was in the section which is the away section when Sampdoria are playing at home, because obviously they move the away section, don't they? Because Sampdoria's ultras are in the Gradinata Sud. So it was basically the very cheap tickets in what is sometimes an away end. So there was like netting in front of the and a big perspex screen separating it from the rest of the main stand. So which slightly got in the way, but it was fine for €11. You can't really grumble.
No,
absolutely. And it gave a fantastic view of the Genoa ultras as well. I couldn't have been sort of closer without being among them, and obviously it was. I just wanted to be close to be able to like really see what they were doing and that kind of thing. So it was really happy with where I was sat.
Love it.
No, so it's essentially for Matt's question, it's the Tribuna. I think it's Settore 5, but it's right beside the Gradinata, but on the Tribuna side. To Alex's point is like he gets the best of both worlds, where not only he can enjoy the chance, but he actually can view it rather than being right in the middle of it, and he's just like almost part of it. So it was actually
and the chants were spreading up to where we were as well, because there were it was a bit of a mixed crowd. I think in my section there's a group of guys from Cologne, I think, in Germany, who I chatted to a little bit. So I wasn't, like the only kind of tourist, I guess, that was there. But there was a lot of locals as well in that section. Not completely full, but, it's like the chants were coming up from the ultras in the curva. And it was clear that, it wasn't like the posh seats, for sort of lack of a better term. It was like people that perhaps wouldn't mind going in the curva, but for whatever reason, maybe they didn't want to be in, right in the thick of it. But the chants were coming up pre-game and then during the game as well. So it was a really good atmosphere where I didn't feel like, I wish I was down there. Maybe that would be a cool experience, although there was, quite a loud few explosions going off from time to time, which was pretty kind of, scared the life out of me from where I was. So to be right in amongst it might have been a bit too much. But the atmosphere was great sort of throughout. People were standing in the bit that I was. So it wasn't like you had to sit down, and, great variety of chants. And I honestly don't think the ultras stopped. Maybe the longest pause in singing was maybe 10 seconds at most, or perhaps they were in the middle of a chant, and if Genoa had a chance, it'd kind of naturally die out because everyone's anticipating a goal potentially. But apart from that, it was completely non-stop. Really good.
I love it. It's like the halftime's almost like a rest finally for Gradinata. It's pretty cool.
I saw quite a lot of ultras sit down at halftime, whereas in England there's like a mass exodus to the concourse to go and buy beer, go and buy hot dogs and that kind of thing. But in the curva, everyone just sat down. They just needed a rest.
It's funny you said that about the bangs too. I was able to catch a match last season, and for anyone that's like not initiated or prepared to go, because I'd been to a couple Premier League matches too, and it's it's obviously it's a lot of fun, but it's very different. And then you hear these explosions, and it's I think in the US we call them sonic booms, like these fireworks that make these really loud bang sounds. It'll scare the shit out of you if you're not prepared to. If you're not expecting that to happen. Well, you probably wouldn't anyway, because you're not seeing it.
I was expecting it, because it's happened at Napoli when I've been in the past. I've been to a match at Marseille in France before, and they had lots of them there.
Yes,
but it still scared the life out of me. Like, whether you expect it or not, it's. I feel like unless I got a season ticket and went to every single game, I think it would scare me. Unless I got used to it.
Yeah,
the spectacle, as you said, was fantastic. Tell me a little bit more about the differences that you saw compared to the atmosphere or whatnot at the Maradona down in Napoli compared to the Ferraris in Genoa.
Yeah, that's really interesting, actually. Well, I imagine most listeners will be sort of clued up by the time they listen to this. about what happened at Napoli and Milan on Sunday evening. Obviously, beyond the scoreline, it was a strange atmosphere because the Napoli ultras in, well, all of Curva A and most of Curva B were basically doing an atmosphere boycott. Kind of, they've never got on with Aurelio De Laurentiis, the Napoli owner. But, there's sort of new fresh reasons adding to the old ones now, like increased ticket prices, the recent ban in the last few months that the club has put on the ultras taking in flags, banners, pyro, fireworks, drums into the stadium when the away fans can still do so, which is why the Milan fans still had all of that, which just seems insane. But so the atmosphere was, it was the, pre-match at Napoli, everyone's still singing along to the famous songs like Live is Life, the Maradona song. But then as soon as the game started, it was quite negative, a bit toxic, and a complete opposite to Genoa. So, and then there was a bit of fighting in Curva B broke out between, we don't know for certain what the reasons were, but it seemed to be certain ultra groups disagreeing with other ultra groups in Curva B about, if they should be staying silent, if they should be getting behind the team, is this the right thing to do? And that wasn't a new thing, for years there's been feuds between different ultra groups at Napoli. But yeah, to sort of answer your question, it was very different atmosphere. It was very downbeat at Napoli, not just because of the scoreline and the performance, but because of the unusual atmosphere. Whereas at Genoa, they couldn't have made more noise if they tried, I don't think. And that is how I think that is just what Italian football is to me. Obviously, I don't think you'll be offended if I say that the level in the Premier League in terms of the football from technical and dynamic and physical point of view is higher, in my opinion, than Serie A. But from, an atmosphere point of view, Italian football is still streets ahead. And I think that's why increasing numbers of English football fans like myself will go over to Italy for games. The atmosphere was great at Genoa, but lots of people like to go and watch the Milan clubs at San Siro. People go to Naples to watch Napoli, countless clubs. And just that's what it should be like for me. It was weird watching Napoli and not having, lots of flags, the sonic booms going off, pyro, a constant drum beat, keeping the ultras in time. It was really strange not having that, but I feel lucky that I still experienced that at Genoa, because that's right up there with the best experience, like atmospheres I've experienced, and probably the best that I've experienced at Napoli as well. The Genoa more than matched that, which I'm sure you'll be happy to hear. And maybe it's partly down to the circumstance. It's obviously no Genoa fan wants the team to be in Serie B.
Right.
But I guess the plus side is that, you're fighting for maybe you'll get the title, but it's looking pretty good that you're going to get automatic promotion. Whereas in recent years, it has been more often than not Genoa kind of trying to fight off relegation from Serie A. It's not going to be a positive atmosphere. Whereas this was very positive, constant singing, everyone getting behind the team. Everyone was completely unified in calling the referee all manner of horrible names.
Oh man, the referee this match.
Yeah.
Terrible.
That's also what I love about that. I think that's a global thing, actually. That's just not Italian football. But, the team, it could be at Napoli on Sunday night. The team were playing terrible, but everyone was going mad at the referee. Genoa on Friday night, the team was playing brilliantly. Atmosphere was incredible, but everyone was still going mad at the referee for the slightest thing that he did wrong. But so in a sort of roundabout way, the atmospheres were very different. But the Genoa, it was much more like how I think we all imagine and sort of our perception of Italian football fandom. And hopefully it remains like that. If Genoa go up and whatever happens in Serie A, whether it's next season or if they go up another season, hopefully, the positive kind of vibes sort of stay, because it's, it was great and everyone was having a good time.
Yeah.
Well, first of all, knock on wood that it's not the next season, but this one that happens.
Oh, I hope so. Yeah. I hope it's this season, but, I don't want to tempt fate. So
no, it's good. It's good that you said that. We say too many things. I think sometimes we're like, wait, that was way too positive. Are we going to see some weird result on the weekend or something?
Yeah, we don't want to jinx anything, but at the same time, definitely, I don't know if you looked into or saw or know about the fact that the ownership has just changed about a year ago, and that's also perhaps it was in junction with the fact of the last bad season in Serie A. But the feelings and the atmosphere around the team has grown drastically since probably the 90s, that we haven't seen so much youth and followership and love and that dynamic and anything that is the thing that you actually did experience right there. There was one point that I wanted to recollect what you just said. So for the fact that you said Italy is way ahead compared to England when it comes to fan, the atmosphere and all that list of beautiful things that are part of the spectacle that when you go to the stadium is Italy ahead or is Italy behind when I'm thinking about now what's happening in Napoli?
Yeah, it's a good point. I actually listened to there's a Napoli podcast on I think it's In the Shadow of Vesuvius with they would obviously their guy in Naples, Michele, he stands in Curva B. He's not an ultra, but obviously he had a very good view of what was happening and is very knowledgeable on the subject. And obviously De Laurentiis, the Napoli owner, has been very open in recent years about, in an ideal world, like the ultras wouldn't be in his stadium. His stadium would be, for families, and it would be like what he calls the British model, which is high ticket prices. It's kind of like more like, I guess, how us football fans view American sports.
Mm-hmm.
More like an NFL experience or a Major League Baseball experience where you go, you pay quite a lot for the ticket. It's a safe corporate atmosphere. You pay $10 for a hot dog or whatever, that kind of thing. I guess the worry is that, this is happening at Napoli.
Right.
Well, ADL isn't going to be the only owner that thinks like this.
Right.
And it's almost like he's trying to just punish the Napoli ultras. So I guess what I learned today from listening to that podcast was that the recent sort of ban on flags and that kind of thing in the Curva was in response to, in January, where some of the Napoli ultras had a big brawl with Roma ultras on the A1 highway somewhere around Tuscany. The two clubs were playing different away matches and they met up for an organised fight, basically.
That was all over the news.
Yeah, and his sort of response has been to kind of almost just sort of crack down on the ultras. Obviously, he's not banned them, but they're enforcing regulations which are in place for years in terms of like fans are supposed to. You'll know this, but they're supposed to have pre-authorization for things like flags and banners and flares and that kind of thing, but no one ever enforces them. Like, Genoa don't enforce it on their ultras, but now they are at Napoli, and I guess the worry is, could that happen at other clubs? You'd think, I don't know, like we all know the history of kind of Lazio's I can't even say it, right. Irreducibili, is it? Yeah. And how notorious they are before. I guess they're the best example of, they almost run the club, or did at one point, in terms of how much money they made out of merchandising and decisions, the influence they had on club decisions. And I guess owners aren't going to want that. And now that ADL, De Laurentiis, is setting this precedent now where he's really cracking down on Napoli's ultras, like that is worrying. Hopefully it doesn't happen anywhere else, because that would, if the average atmosphere at a Serie A or Serie B game is like what it was at Napoli on Sunday night, then it's just going to feel like the Premier League, really. Well, and obviously Premier League has lots going for it in terms of the style of play and that, and you do get singing, but it's nowhere near the spectacle for people like us that like to enjoy that kind of thing and vocally follow the team and express ourselves.
Yeah,
it's a different product, I guess, and that says it in itself, like calling it a product, because that's what owners and some owners would like, I think, is to be a product more than members kind of just going and expressing themselves, I guess.
But I think that's exactly like on the nose what it is. And maybe we're, being as close to the game as we are, we're kind of unique in our perspective in it. But it definitely feels like you miss some of that connection and that closeness. Because like when you're like, I was lucky enough to sit in the Gradinata, I guess, stand really. When I was there, I knew maybe 2 or 3 of the chants from being with Genoa Club New York and seeing them when I was there, but I don't really speak Italian at all or anything, but you still feel this real, passion and connection from all of the fans that are there that is unique, I think. And it's not to say like when you watch a Premier League match, the fans in the stands don't have a passion for their club or that connection, but it's definitely expressed in a different way. And the way it feels less close to a person's identity as a fan than maybe it does when you're directly seeing that outward show of support and that kind of participation almost in the match, that is, instead of kind of sitting back and kind of watching the match and looking out for good passages of play, you're like almost actively participating in it. And it's definitely worrying if it's Napoli that's cracking down, because of all of the grounds in Italy, they're famous for being, an amazing atmosphere, and where we've all seen those like old what's that guy's name? Decibel Bellini, the guy with like the mics. That's not his actual name. guy's Instagram account, but
Mm.
what you're familiar with that, and so seeing that go away does feel kind of like a departure maybe in what we think of football to be.
Well, I guess the good thing, like after I totally forgot about that, the clashes against the between the Napoletani and the Romanisti. If that is the reason, I have a good feeling that it might be just a one-off, hopefully. While I do not necessarily agree that it should be the club to reprimand the fans, and there should be more on a legal aspect, like banning fans to go to the stadium per se, and so on from a legality perspective. So, like police or whatever. No, I want to hope that it's not the next step of Italian approach, similar to, I don't know, just to make it as a comparison with the UK, to have it more, like family orientated with a higher ticket prices and so on, as that's embedded within the Italian culture to have it the way it is today. And I can even, if we look at old footages, and that's, you still see that obviously they're not organized as they are today, but that whole fans and ultra type of style has always been there with the flags and whatnot. So having seen that gone, it would be quite sad. And I'm hoping, and I don't think it'll go that way, but let's keep fingers crossed. That's all I can say at this point. So going back quickly to the match, Alex, it's hard because unless you go and look into the history itself, there are deep roots of connections between Genoa and England, being the oldest football team in Italy and being founded by Englishmen. So a certain Sir James Spenceley was one of the co-founders of Genoa, hence Genoa Football and Cricket Club. Is there any knowledge in England when you hear, talk, or see about Genoa? Not really.
No, I don't think there is. Well, I've not come across it. I think, unfortunately for you guys, you're not going to thank me for saying this, but I think, there is a generation, and I'm slightly too young for it, but I've got into Italian football through other means, but there's a generation of Italian football, or calcio fans in England who got into it in the 90s because it was shown on Channel 4, I think it was, in the UK. And you guys know James Richardson, with Gazzetta Football Italia, that sort of magazine style program, which showed highlights and games and that kind of thing. And at the time, Sampdoria were good, and they had Mancini and Vialli, and I think if most people will probably associate, which sounds mad because given that Genoa is the anglicized version of the name Genova, but I think most people will be more familiar with Sampdoria because of that. And other things like the kit, it's quite an iconic shirt because of the Cup Winners' Cup that they won in it, and the sort of unusual design. So I wouldn't say that, I'm
not going to comment on that one. Just so
yeah, I'm not. I won't say their name again. I don't know. I don't think, maybe there is, because as I said, I wasn't one of the sort of Football Italia generation of the 90s. So maybe someone, slightly older than myself that did watch that.
Totally understandable. While there was a lot more, I guess, exposure from the other side on the international level, and therefore they went to the Coppa Campioni, which is the Champions League today, while Genoa in the same year did very well, probably the best in a long period, even though they ended fourth that year, so they qualified for the Coppa UEFA. And even though we were the first Italian team to win at Anfield against Liverpool, so that made a little bit of rumor per se, but obviously the exposure that is given on the Champions League side compared to the UEFA is obviously quite different. You are right, it's a generational thing, definitely. Nothing has happened. I'm saying that with a smirk on my face. Nothing has happened for them since. So I can hope that the next generations are going to wake up and smell the cookie. are not going to be, be a little bit more associated with that side versus the other, and find more what, like we know it, who listens to us knows it because we say it quite often. At the end, Genoa still remains the fourth most decorated team in Italy, having 9 Scudetti. I know last one will be next year, will be 100 years since that last one. But, as many have complained about what modern soccer is all about, or modern football is all about compared to the past, that's why you don't see, you want to see Leicester's success more often rather than the big ones. And that's no offense, obviously, to who is following the bigger teams. But I guess that's what the love was when it was used to be in a different way, rather than just whoever's tied close to the bigger money. Okay, so you hurt my feelings by saying that there's not much understanding. No, I'm joking. I'm kidding. But it ultimately, the truth is, it's ultimately all up to Genoa as a club to be more exposed and international in order to be more known. And I guess before we wrap up the first half of our pod, just wanted to, if there's anyone that wanted to reach out to you and talk to you, or connect with you and so on, how can they reach out to you?
Yeah, well, I'm on Twitter. That's probably the best place. My username is @Alex_Brotherton, which is, surprisingly, a number of people don't know how to spell it, but it's just brother and then TON at the end. But yeah, thank you very much for having me on. It's been a real pleasure. And I just encourage anyone because I was quite surprised by the lack of tourists actually in yes. Genova, the city. I know it's not high season, but I get the impression that a lot of people from the UK will fly to Genova and then head straight to Cinque Terre? Yeah. And but it's just such a lovely city. I think it's got the best of a lot of different places in Italy that I've been to. There's bits that have got the chaos of Naples, which I quite like. Mm-hmm. There's I've forgotten the name. The street, is it Via Nova on Via Garibaldi, which is just, that could be straight out of like a big street in sort of Rome or Milan or something like that. And it's got the port and obviously you've got the coast. I spent a day looking. I think I went to Camoli.
Beautiful.
Yeah. I was going to go to Portofino, but the trains kind of messed me up. Camoli was lovely. So yeah, I just encourage anyone that's listening to try and head over to Genoa. It's overlooked, I think, but it's a real gem. And obviously get to a Genoa match and maybe give the other club a miss, because that's the Il Grifone is where it's at. So yeah,
there we go.
Thank you for the kind words, and thank you definitely for joining us as our special guest here at the Lanterna podcast. Let's connect and let's go to the break, and we'll see everyone right after that. Thanks again, Alex. Much appreciated. My name is Fabrizio Cardone, and I approve this message. Welcome back, bentornati, I should say, to La Lanterna after our break. Thank you to our guest, Alex. That was quite interesting, different points of views and whatnot. What did you think about that, Matt?
I mean, I remember this article. I wanted to mention it before. It was in The Guardian. I think that came out at the beginning of the season, because they were talking about how, so in England, just as it is in Italy, there are different competitions, of course, right? Like you have the Premier League, you have the English Football League, which I guess this is maybe where England, and I actually don't know, Serie A and Serie B, are they all in the same structure? Is there like a different legal entity with Serie A?
Different league entity, but they are within the same structure when it comes, as you know, relegation, but they're different entities.
Yes, I'm kind of getting at this in a roundabout way, because you have the quote unquote football league, which used to encompass all of the top four divisions. Now it's the second, third, and fourth division. And then you have what's thought of as like non-league or semi-professional, which is
I only know about it because of that Rexall or whatever it's called.
Wrexham?
Yes. Otherwise I didn't know about it.
Do you guys get that show in Canada? The FX show with Ryan Reynolds in them?
Well, I got it. I can't remember which streaming, but
I guess they did the streaming thing. Like everybody's watching cable anymore. I'm like the only guy watching cable because I want to watch the local New York sports teams. I'm like a dinosaur over here. But hey, I gotta watch my Rangers and my Knicks. But
you're younger than I am, and you're like the old guy here.
I literally was streaming the New York Yankees on a smart speaker earlier today, listening to some old guy talk. So I think I am like the 55-year-old demographic. I was basically listening to radio during my
I think it's the old radio days where in Italy, in Corso Italia, which you've been in Genova, where people on Sunday at 3 p.m. were listening to the radio. It was not the highlights, but it would be like a few seconds of every match, and you were listening there. Hey, Ameri, here is coming from Genova. Genoa just scored.
See, that's what I feel like. That's quality stuff right there. Even like the basic, like the old stuff. I don't know if they did this in Italy too, but when they go through, kind of like when we're breaking down the league table, and they just are literally reading the score line for each match, and they're saying Reggina 0, Genoa 1, and then they just go like, I don't know. There's something like weirdly soothing to me about that. But anyway, back to the point I was trying to make. Different leagues actually in England have different regulations. And one of the things that they were talking about was, I can't recall if this had to do with some of the other cup events that maybe are a little bit less heralded and not as well known outside of England. So obviously you have the FA Cup and the League Cup, but they have a couple other cups that are being held there, and those require trips to Wembley. Or if it was more of like the promotion matches to get teams up into the next division. But anyway, the conversation was about how some fans had gone to Wembley, and because the regulations are different, there were instances where there were English fans gasp that had flares at the ground, and you had people sharing their perspectives on this. So you had some, maybe one father who's bringing his 6-year-old girl to a match for the first time, and she's saying, "Daddy, what's that weird smell? I don't like it." And then you've got cue the laughter, I guess. And then you've got, maybe the 1920 something who's all about the club and he's going crazy and talking about how great the atmosphere was or whatever. And so I think it's such an interesting thing. It reminds me a lot of when I was discussing with Enrique, who was gracious enough to guide me through the Marassi when I visited there. And when we were sharing and talking about, the different experiences that we've had going to matches, and me going to, as we'd call them, games in the US, and seeing different things. And I kept thinking back of this thing that he said to me, which still I think rings true, which is it's kind of just a different concept of sport. I don't believe that American fans are less passionate than Italian fans in their respective sports or the things that they pay attention to or care about. But when you go to a match, the expectation when you're going to Marassi to watch Genoa play is that you're going to see banners and flags and pyros, and Guasto d'Amore now is a fixture as part of what's going to happen. And Lega Serie B is going to feature us again on their Instagram account because we're the only stadium making some noise beyond a couple. And everyone's getting excited about this whole thing.
They're going to miss us.
I think so. I mean, well, hold on. Knock on wood, Fabry.
I did.
You're wearing off on me. But there's that angle versus when you would expect to normally go to a game over here, or as kind of we were talking about when you think about the Premier League. And I don't know if it's completely accurate to say this, but there's generally a concept that the Premier League is more or less an Americanization of European football, in the sense that it's higher ticket prices, it's corporations, it's, hey, try to keep that stuff down type of an environment, and you generally don't have the fan craziness and the loudness that you experience in other grounds. I think 99% of this is ticket prices, honestly. And then maybe you do have some policy that say no flags, but even without flags, you can have a great atmosphere,
I think we should keep this as one of the topics that we can use during the summer when we don't know what to talk about. Having said that, I have mixed feelings about this, but we'll definitely should go a little bit more deep into this topic, because there are different opinions and there are different pros and cons, no matter how you put it. One could say, while the ultra / hooliganism, all these factors, you don't have much of the hooligans anymore, but at the same time, right, you don't have that core that is the spectacle portion. But at the same time, a lot of clubs make a lot of money based on the good tickets, high prices. We talked about it offline for a second, and then I'll cut it off. But the MLSE, which is the Maple Leaf Sports Entertainment, which is considered to be one of the most successful franchises of the world with respects to always sold out, even though, for example, in hockey, the Toronto Maple Leafs have done diddly squat since ever, but yet the stadium is always full. But anyways, long story. We'll talk about a little bit more about it. But I have mixed feelings. I have good things about how it is today. I have bad things about how it can be tomorrow, and vice versa. Going back to our match, we didn't have a chance to really talk too much with Alex about it. I mean, we talked about what was surrounding, but not about what the actual match was all about.
Yeah, I know. Let's get into it. I mean, this was such a critical match for us. It was a critical match in many respects for Reggina as well. And so for us to get this result was obviously massive, especially in the context with where Frosinone kind of ended up in match day 31 as well. But enough on that. Let's focus more specifically on the match. I mean, Fabry, what stood out to you with this one? What did you think was kind of Genoa's key to really being successful against Reggina?
I think momentum is definitely part of our moment right now. We had our issues throughout the season, from a blessing all the way through getting an identity and which probably even the label that was given to us from the get-go, that we were supposed to be the thrasher, the one that was supposed to kill the league and so on, which did not happen. But I think that the form, the shape, the feeling, the atmosphere, the players is basically there now. And I think that stability, which is huge, I think psychologically, that type of approach is that type of I guess strength is one of the biggest things that any team needs and wants. And I think that's one of the things that brought Frosinone all the way to where they are today, because they have been together for at least 1 or 2 seasons. So they have the continuity. They have the continuity with the coach. They have a whole bunch of things that there's no star in Frosinone. But why were they the leaders of the league for so long? And they still are to this date. But before we continue, let me just put this audio track from our friend Dan from the last episode. He can give us his point of view from the match first, and then we can talk about it after.
Hey, Matt and Fabry, it's Dan from Reggina fans. I just want to say congratulations on your win. Congratulations on being one step closer to promotion. You guys deserve the 3 points against us. Definitely. You were the better team on paper. You were the better team on the pitch. Just looking at the two rosters, I mean, we have Strelic, you have Coda. There's no comparing the two teams, and it showed. So we could have stolen a point, definitely at the end. That shot from Canotto looked like it was heading in. That was an amazing save by Martinez. I mean, he's a great goalkeeper. Seeing that response from Inzaghi in the second half and that fight, even putting us in the position to get a point from that match that could have happened, it was a positive takeaway for me, seeing that type of response from our team. So that gives me some hope heading into our next match against Perugia. But in terms of other opinions on the match, I wasn't sure why Inzaghi used a 3-5-2. That's not a formation we've seen from him this year. So it was good to see him at least trying something new, because everything else he's done has not been working. So the 3-5-2, can't say that it worked against you, but it was just good to see him trying that. And the penalty, I mean, was that a handball that wasn't called in the box against you? Maybe it wasn't, probably wasn't, but that kind of call has gone against us 1 or 2 times this year. So it was surprising that it didn't get reviewed. And that was my only really grievance from the match. And then other than that, I'm kind of mad at Hellbiz Live, because my stream would go down every 10 minutes. I would try to my laptop, my TV, my phone, and it kept shutting down. So I am mad at Hellbiz Live right now. So other than that, I would say congratulations. And, maybe you guys don't want to be promoted because you have the best podcast right now in Serie B. And do you want to go to Serie A and compete with all those other podcasts? I don't think you guys should. So maybe slow down a little bit. That's it. See you later.
Thank you, Dan, for your comments. Really appreciate it. I understand that it's not an easy time for Reggina. Still waiting on those points, possible points. Let's not put that as an obvious thing that is going to happen. So you're going to have to pull up your sleeves and try to do the best. But going back to your original question, Matt, so that my point was that strength that has, that's what made the victory happen. What do you think?
Yeah, we've been on that form. We've had that weight. I mean, to your point, if we want to get into some of the X's and O's for a second, I guess, look at me using my American phrases once again. But one of the things that we were trying to figure out with this match was how we were going to set up against Reggina. We were expecting kind of possibly the same 3-5-2 formation, but without Haps, and with everyone thinking that Crescito would step into the starting lineup, and indeed he did. Are we going to look at maybe 4 at the back, or is it going to look a little bit different? How are we going to approach it? We did pretty much have the same formation. I think the typical starting 3 in the midfield have been very consistent under Gila, and we now have a little bit of a problem to deal with Sturaro's red card, which we need to talk about the referee in a second, because I can't not talk about that any much longer, because I'm still pissed about the entire sequence that happened in that game. But Sturaro, Badel, Strootman, all kind of those 3 central midfielders, Sibeli and Mimo kind of playing in sort of this wing back type of a role as the 5th midfielders, Goodmanson and Coda, the starting forwards, Dragoshin, Voyako, Bani, the defenders, and of course Martinez in goal. So what you're seeing is really a very specific way of playing from Gila. I think you're right in saying that the team is really reacting to this, and we're seeing some good things from them. I think this match, the frustrating thing from the very beginning was just how many times were we going to see a foul from Reggina players before seeing any sort of of card or any sort of reaction from the referee. And I think we were talking on the group chat, it took like 10 fouls before we saw any sort of yellow. Like literally, that's not an exaggeration. I don't know what was going on. I think that really, it spoke a little bit to me. That seemed like the game plan, because I don't know if you remember this, but earlier on in the match, when Bonnie, I think, actually went off, and I'm not sure if you know any more new details about him and his recovery, but there was a collision that seemed to have happened. I'll be honest in saying in real time, it looked like maybe Bonnie was trying to milk that. But when you look at the replay, you see he clearly had a head collision that had happened. And I don't know if you remember, but when the cameras kind of cut back to Pippo Inzaghi on the Reggina touchline, he was furious. He was incensed. And it looked like he was thinking that Bonnie was embellishing the call. I guess it's a two-part thing. One, would love to know if we know anything more about how Bonnie is doing, but also to me, seeing that reaction from Pippo, that looked to me like a manager that has a pretty specific set of instructions to his guys. And I think that they carried it out in the match. He can say what he wants after the match and all that kind of post-match stuff, but to me, I don't think there was a coincidence that we saw this many kind of fouls in play that the Reggina team had, and you saw Genoa's kind of response to what was going on there. Fairly so.
Let's start by saying Bani underwent a surgery yesterday, I think, for his nasal sac at the Genoa hospital. From a clinical standpoint, seems that the defender is doing well. He had this surgery. So the surgery shows you that the actual injury was not that light, hence not stopping bleeding and so on. And that's why it took a little bit before he actually had to be subbed right away. That we were at the 8th minute or something like that within the match. Ilsanker came in fairly barely off
I think. Yeah. Very early
on injury, but he came in, and I think he did quite a great sub for him. And nothing, I want to say that apparently he will be called up for Como, possibly. Will he be part of the starting 11 or not? That'll be ultimately Gino Ladino's call. Now, then from the Reggina fans, please don't hate me, but I think that Pippo Inzaghi has prepared the match mostly on the psychological aspect. So I'm just going to take it a little bit more one step behind what you just said, but essentially he tried to work the match on a psychological level. And however they approached it, if you really think about it, besides the 1-0, it worked in their favor. Players nervous, making the fans nervous. At the end, it was a great match, I think. I think it was a great vis-a-vis, as we say in French, with respect to both faced each other, maybe equally, maybe not. I was looking at the stats, and it's not that bad for Reggina themselves.
Yep.
At the end, shots on target were 4 for 2 for Genoa. So ultimately, the result is legit. Off target are 7-0 for Reggina. So it's funny, actually. Shot on target for Reggina were 2. Shots in total were 2. If you look at the possession, again, this was something that we said a couple episodes ago, where instead of having the 60, 70, almost sometimes of ball possession, we're dropping more on the 55, 58%, which shows that you're not sweating like crazy, and you're letting them sweat a little bit too, which gives them a little bit more chances. But at the same time, you're not getting too tired out and not having any more of those possibility of shots and whatnot. Number of shots in stats over all of the matches have increased for Genoa. Actually, I think Genoa is one of the highest, if not the highest, for shots on goal, which if you think about it, from the Blessin era, you could count them on maybe a hand or two. But at the end of the day, right now, Genoa has this aspect of being able to create. And even though a lot of fans are thinking that there isn't much, numbers are there, guys. So it's possibilities that can eventually go into the goal. So again, Bani, what you said. One more thing to add to it. The Reggina match was the record for Genoa match. It was a total of 30,755 tickets, including 20,000 season tickets and the 1,500 more or less from Reggina. Fantastic. You heard it even from Alex. It was at the most 10 seconds of a gap between one chant and the other one. And I think that was also the 12th man, that encouraging aspect that I didn't say before, but that encouraging aspect that the team always feels. And now, as we said that a few times now, finally the Tempo, the Ferraris, has become that fortress, they have a hard time to leave without any points.
Yeah, I mean, I think the 10 seconds between chances is the standard for the Gradinata Nord, to be honest with you. I think that's how it is when you go to see Genoa play. That's how it was. At least I know I speak only on an individual occasion, but having watched a side being relegated, that was also how it was. So I have to imagine it's.
Are you saying we're planning the next match, you and I, to go to the Ferais together? Is that what we're saying?
Yeah, we should do some market research and make sure that this is still showing up and holding up accurately. I think we need to sample some focaccia as well while we're doing that. But
absolutely,
I think that this match was such. As a fan, these are one of those matches I think that you remember. We were playing at home. We're playing a difficult opponent. There's a lot on the line.
Revenge from the first leg.
Revenge from the first leg is really important. We really need to make sure we're consolidating our position, at least with automatic promotion. We're trying to maybe get to that top position. Again, it's a good side. To your point, they have kind of a specific tactical approach to how they want to take this match, and that's maybe a euphemism for being overly aggressive in physical contact. But at the same time, this is a squad that is capable. I know, like when we were speaking with Dan last week, there were some concerns about them maybe not being as in form and having a lot more questions in defense, and especially in goal and everything else that had happened. But this is a difficult opponent. I thought Genoa rose to the occasion. I actually did not think it was that close, to be honest with you. I thought Martinez had an absolutely amazing game, and he saved at least one really big chance that probably should have been a leveler at the end of the match. But beyond that happening, and he did have some other good saves as well.
One or two of them were offside, so he still did those great saves, by the way.
Yes. If you want to think about it in another way, you kind of mentioned it before. Total shots was 18-3. Okay. Big chances was 3-1, both in favor to Genoa. Big chances missed was 3-1, also in favor to Genoa. I think in the end of the day, while the game was on a knife's edge for the end there, and we hadn't really ever killed the game off, as evidenced by the fact that Reggina could have easily gotten a point out of that match, I thought that we looked the part. It was so encouraging to see that goal from Coda, to see that movement and that play. We were texting, I think maybe, I can't remember if it was before or after, but there were some moments there too where we had moved the ball up really quickly from the back and had some chances and just couldn't quite find that finishing touch. And, it feels like, as you mentioned at the beginning, we have a team that's really humming, and we're finding our stride. We're working things out together. It is such a good sign to see a goal like that from Massimo Coda. I cannot say that enough. Like, I know that.
Before you get to the goal, the match started, I would think, on an equal, if not a smidge more for Reggina. I don't know if you remember that part, but
they were in our opposing third at the beginning part of the match. Yes, that's true.
Again, no major. Those were those small chances and whatnot. One, I remember this easy save from it was basically got in his legs. Other shots got out of the blue, like up in the stars. A couple of first actions, they not dangerous, but were coming from them. And then I'm not too sure if it was the actual first action from Genoa, but around the 36th, I think was the goal was on the 36th minute. That's when the goal came. Let's hear that audio from the actual goal itself.
Here's Sturaro, Coda on the move, Coda still, Massimo Coda! And there is the opening goal. It's great play by Stefano Sturaro, and the finish is unerring. Great accuracy, rebounds in off the post, no chance Colombi.
So essentially it comes from the midfield. Again, I'm going to remark the fact of the ability and the amazing ability. Martinez starts those actions, most of those actions.
Yes. And it wasn't just this goal. There were other movements that he started.
Yes. And a lot of people get afraid of it because they're used to the old style. I'm not going against them, but I'm just trying to wake up a little bit of, let's not get stuck to the football, the soccer from the Middle Ages, essentially. Let's look at the goalie, where he's a major component of the team, not only to save, but also to set up those actions. And a lot of times you for sure remember that Martinez was almost at the mid of the field. And you were like, what the fuck is he doing at that level? What happens if you miss it, right?
Right.
And so the goal, the action of the goal starts from the midfield. Sturaro goes on for a 20-meter straight from the middle, about close to the edge of the box. He gives another precision pass to Coda to the right side within the box, and is able to give that shot on the goal so angled that touched the post.
That's an incredibly difficult shot. There's nothing that keeper could have done. Like it just is. That is, and when you even just watching the slow motion version of that, it's just like this poetic kind of the ball's almost like rolling into the corner and almost like dinking off of the post a little bit. Like when it goes in, he kind of saw that space that he had. He had just that tiny bit of space between the defender and where he was trying to get his shot off. And I think he just perfectly placed that ball. And that was kind of the really big moment. I felt like, you're right, the beginning of the game, Reggina was more in their element. They were kind of looking a little bit more dangerous, but I thought as the match went on that Genoa were increasingly looking confident and having those opportunities. And maybe we didn't always have some really challenging shots on goal. They gave the keeper something to worry about, but it seemed like we were building into the game. And I thought this goal was a real culmination of the work that had happened in like the 15 or 20 minutes prior. And again, like you just have to be, even when you look at its angle, like you have it like on a stop frame right now, the ball almost looks like it's going to be going out or it's going to kind of be off target, but it just perfectly placed and it just kind of nestled right in the back of the goal. An amazing shot from Coda.
And then from there on, I still think that the options, the chances were still on the Genoa side. If I have to go back a little bit in the first half, a lot of chances were there. Goodmanson great as well as usual. Coda was, even though he came back from his, there was a crossover from Goodmanson all the way from the right.
Yes.
And then Coda was almost in the middle of the box and he kind of wanted to give that heel, but it was way off. So it was like,
he timed it wrong. I mean, it was that run was really kind of an amazing one from Goodmanson too, I think in that specific instance. He just didn't have it right. But I really felt like we were, when you think about like the passages of play and like how we were doing it, for me, it just really looked like, I don't mean to be negative on the Blessin era and thinking about those types of things, but we did not look like a side that was struggling to score goals. And to your point before, like if that statistic is true, honestly, I think it's absolutely remarkable if it's true that we're one of the leading sides in shots on target in Serie B, because look, I don't think we had an amazing record under Blessing in that category. I really don't. I thought
not a bad one, but not an amazing.
Not a bad one. No. Yeah. I mean, we weren't abysmal. It wasn't like we were peppering the goal with shots on target all the time. Like we had a couple each match. Half the time we were saying, is Coda even playing? This is the same season of Genoa that we're talking about. And I understand it's a 1-0 win. Could have been 1-1 if Martinez didn't have that amazing kind of cat paw save at the end of the match. But at the same time, it feels, when you are paying attention and you're watching these matches, it really looks like we have an opportunity to be dangerous. And that was something that we weren't seeing before. Honestly, as Genoa fans, it's something we've probably not seen in a really long time. And so it's just kind of exciting to watch that happen.
A really long time.
Yeah. Right? The only thing I can relate to, which this sounds like so depraved, is the Ballardini era with like Zappacosta.
I can even go further back than that.
You can go further back than that for sure. But like I remember there was a window of the second half of the season of that year with Scamacca as well, where we were starting to score goals. And Shomurodov, we were starting to score goals a lot. That we weren't exactly lighting Serie A on fire in goals scored at all.
Before that, we can go to Piatek. Before that, Gilardino himself.
Allegri.
Further back, we can go even to Borriello. It's like, or forget about Milito because that's obvious choices. But
yeah,
I wanted to say now Coda 9 goals, 4 penalties. Listen to this one. Last penalty is now an anniversary because the last one came from Genoa Como.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. So last penalty given to Genoa was 19 matches ago.
And obviously our next opponent. Cool.
Before we go on with the match, and I wanted to, I guess the match itself is like even though we are not with the goleada, 2 goals, 3 goals, 4 goals, it was a 1-0. I still think it was well deserved, as also Dan mentioned it. But at the same time, we still want to talk about the ref. But before we go to the ref, and forgive me for doing this to you, because I know that at heart, it's something that you just want to. Anyways, match day 31 for Serie B. So we had obviously an opening with Genoa Reggina, 1-0 on Friday, March 31st. Then on all the long line of matches happening on Saturday, April 1st. April Fool's Day. No, it was. Well, it wasn't. Maybe. Yes, actually it did. It was a fool, but it actually happened well for us. Venezia wins at Como. Our next opponent. It was a 3-2 win for Venezia. Venezia again. Are they waking up or not? Are they going to be able to say this up? I think they have that opportunity.
I think so too. I think so too. Yeah.
It's entirely up to them. Como opens up the score line at the 8th minute, and I said, oh my God, poor Venezia. I mean, even though they're not necessarily our team, also since the Middle Ages against Venezia for the Maritime Republics, but they're being condemned.
A good old Renaissance era clash,
Yes. End of the fourth half, 1-1. Good tie. End of the first half. Second half starts with Venezia on the rampage. Second goal goes with at the 48th minute, so at the third minute of the second half with Milanese. 2 minutes after, they bring it up to 3-1, all the way to end the match. I think on the 90th minute, whatnot, Como was able to reach the 3-2. So that was quite an exciting match. The one after that, which we said that it was going to be an interesting one, Parma against Palermo. So it was quite interesting. Parma, the yo-yo. So you don't really know what to expect from these guys. They opened the scoreline. So it was 1-0 for Parma on the 32nd minute. Palermo tied at 41st minute, so close to the end of the first half. And it seemed like it was going to be a stalemate. 1-1 anyways. But second half at 18th minute, Koulibaly was able to do the 2-1, giving the 3 points to the Parmigiani. Then we have Spal Ternana, which we know what Ternana is all about. At the 4th minute, Spal is able to score the first goal, so leading 1-0 almost for the majority of the match. And then our friend, if you want to call him friend, Favilli is back, scoring at the
I don't want to call him a friend, I don't think, but
no, it was like a rhetorical friend. But scores 6 minutes to the end of the second half, able to bring the 1 point home, playing at Ferrara, but nevertheless, it was a 1-1. Cosenza Pisa. Oh my God, guys. Pisa are our friends. Cosenza are both our friends. So it was hard to take part in this match because on one side, Pisa wants the point, obviously, to play off range. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, Cosenza's hungry for points because so many teams are down at the relegation area. And there's that fight, I think, is going to be close. Going to be all the way up to the end of the season, and the more points you put in your bag, and the better it is. Cosenza playing at home won 1-0 against Pisa, not an easy one, and it's a good team. And with that score from Nasti, that young striker that also our friend Rafa was talking to us about.
Nasti's been kind of fun to watch. I'm glad to see Cosenza getting a little bit of, I wouldn't say they're breathing easy right now, but it's good to see them having some good results.
Next one up was Ascoli Brescia, and the 4-3, 7 goals. That's an incredible match. It actually went almost to the 100th minute for everything that was happening during that match. 1 red card on the Ascoli side and a whole bunch of shots on goal. 16 in total, 16 to 17 for Brescia. That shows you how busy that match was. Starting with an opening goal from Brescia on the 19th minute. The end of the first half, Ascoli tying at the 42nd minute. Second half, you have the second goal by Ascoli, bringing them 2-1. All the way for, again, Bari tying the score to 2-2. Then hell breaks loose. 90th minute +1. There's a penalty for Ascoli, bringing them to 3-2. Then Ascoli again on the 90th +5 minutes. A 4-2, but 90th +9 minutes brings it to 4-3. Ascoli brings the point home. What a match. 7 goals. Cagliari su Tirol. That was another one on our watch list, wasn't it?
Mm-hmm. Big one.
Ended 1-1. Cagliari was supposed to bring the whole points back home. They opened the goal scoring sheet in the first half, 30th minute with Lapadula, of course. Now he's the goal score leader in Serie B. I know.
What would you? I mean, look.
I don't want to answer that. Go on. Sorry.
I can't. I don't know if I could even make fun of him because I just a second ago was comparing a rampant goal-scoring season to the 2020-21 Serie A campaign. So I don't know if I can even say anything. If I'm referencing Zappacosta and Scamacca as a high scoring period of Genoa's existence, I don't know if I can say shit about Lapadula right now. But at the same time, it's kind of hilarious to me that Lapadula is the leading scorer of Serie B.
He has been, and that's where he came from in order to be in the Serie A. When he was, I think, at Pescara. I don't know.
No, that's right. That's correct. He was at Pescara for a second.
Okay, and that's where he was like found and brought up in Serie A, and then with a whole bunch of other teams, but then never did anything. Südtirol scored at 2 minutes at the end. Incredible. Basically managed to get 1 point and managed also to keep down Cagliari, which we're supposed to aim for the second spot, if you remember that, right? Mm-hmm. Now, after that, we have Bari Benevento. That was a clean win for Bari. All scores came in the second half, 54th and 71st minute, but Bari brings all 3 points home. Then second last, we have Perugia Frosinone. So this was the other match that we were looking at, hoping that there could be the miracle, if you remember. Indeed, who opened the score was actually Perugia in the 62nd minute. They scored first against the Frosinone side, which brought us to be the best now defense of Serie B with 19 goals conceded compared to the 20 from Frosinone because of this goal from Perugia. Then Frosinone on the 77th minute, so 15 minutes later, scores the tie and it essentially ends there. So that we'll get to the standings in a second. Last but not least, another match that was highly expected on the Sunday match for Serie B was Modena against Cittadella. High expectations. Modena sitting a little bit on an easier side of the table. Cittadella hungry for points, playing away. It was a very ugly match from both sides, but at the end it was a 1 point for each. Now, where does that lead us to the table? That tie Frosinone has brought us closer to Frosinone. So Frosinone 63 points, 4 points below on the second spot is Genoa. To the third spot is again Bari because of their win compared to the tie with Südtirol. 6 points differential to 53. So Genoa 59 and 53 for Bari. Fourth, 1 point right underneath them is Südtirol at 52. Then a small gap of 6 points, not really, for Cagliari on the fifth spot. Pisa at 45, alongside with Reggina at 45. But mind you, we're recording this now on Wednesday, where Reggina has already played the recuperated match against Perugia, which they have won 3-1. So that brings them back up a little bit into the game. 44 points, so 1 point below the duo Pisa and Reggina is Parma on the 8th spot, which is the last spot for the playoffs. 2 points below them is Palermo. Ternana 2 points below again at 40. Then 1 point below that we have another group, which is, listen to this, Modena, Como, Ascoli, all three at 39. 3 points below that is Venezia, so have woken up and out of the relegation area, alongside with Cittadella at 36. 1 point below that now is Cosenza at the tail end of that playoffs with Perugia 34. The last three are now Spal 29, Benevento 29, Brescia 28. Incredible.
I have to say, we are going to be in for a cracking match day 32. I really think that we are. I mean, when you look at some of the different matches that are going to be happening this upcoming match week, you have Spal and Benevento, both locked in.
Wait, don't go there yet.
You want me to hold?
No,
Okay.
I want to hold off on that one.
All right.
Why? Because I want you to open up again the beef, because it is. I have it too.
Okay.
I want you with the refereeing. The referee
was something else in this match. Thank you. Yes, we should complain about this for a long time.
Open rank.
Because I was going to go straight into that, but I don't know what the hell this guy was watching in this match. Like, this whole thing.
Wait, let me repeat that. I don't know what this guy was watching. Love it.
I mean, how many times did we have to see this looks like a foul? There's a foul. And granted, at least they were calling most of the time fouls when those things were happening. It wasn't exactly like he was completely letting play go. But how many times, my guy, do we have to watch this match happen and there's not going to be a single card? There's not a single reflex. I recognize I guess give people some credit. It was a team effort in this case. It wasn't just a single player completely hacking down our guys. But you have to understand
That's true.
at some point you have to react to what's happening in this match. And even if you see 6 fouls and maybe those 6 fouls in isolation aren't yellow cards, when you see 6 consecutive fouls and we're under 30 minutes, you probably need to issue a yellow card because this stuff happens. And I think like out of all of this stuff, the irony, of course, is that the lone player sent off in this match is Sturaro for something. I don't know if you'd seen specifically what he had said, but literally this guy got sent off for words. Okay. I don't know what he said. He was already on the bench with a jacket on while there was a scuffle happening, and he got kind of near the scuffle. Sturaro, to be fair, in this match was in and among several different scuffles that had happened during the game while he was still playing. Nothing really got out of control, as the English might say. Nothing untoward happened in the match, all to be said. I don't mean to be mocking our English listeners because I actually kind of like that phrase. But yes, he was in the thick of things, but I just think it seems ridiculous to me to issue a red card to what a guy is saying unless he said something that was just so foul that you had to caution. He wasn't even playing in the match at that period of time. I don't know if anybody heard or if there's a rumor out there, but to me, like, it just seemed like another example. You're going to watch all this stuff happen, and now at the end of the match, when the tie is over, you're going to start giving yellow cards and red cards and stuff like this.
Oh, no. I'm sorry, Matt. He did not start to give yellow cards at the end of the match. After all that mishap happening right at the few minutes towards the end, which, by the way, gave 1 day ban to Sturaro and 10K the ticket or whatever you want to say, like he can afford that. At the end, only Sturaro got the
only Sturaro.
Only Sturaro. And on the other side, zip, nilch, nothing, nada.
I just don't understand it. It doesn't make any sense to me.
Like, did he say his wife was, doing something with someone else? Like, you know what I mean?
Was it like a Zidane or something where he said something and then?
I don't know. Like, why only? I mean, I'm not saying that it was wrong. I'm not saying it was God, like he was in there and you could see that Sturaro was in there, right in there. But he was not the only one.
No, I mean, that's why this whole thing is just kind of like, you watch this happen, you see all the fouls and everything else, and it's just kind of, how do we end up with this? I'm not saying the referee was, I mean, obviously there was bias in calling the match. I don't know any sort of partisan shit or anything like that. I don't want to speculate that. I don't know if there's anything like really like sinister happening with this, but it just was bizarre to watch that happen during the match and not see like really any sort of reaction from the referee. I mean, in the end, I guess, if you want to be fair about discipline, as the statisticians will say when they get their facts and figures, Reggina did have 6 yellow cards to Genoa's 3. Of course, Genoa had the only red card in the match. So on the whole, Reggina players were booked more than Genoa players were. But it just seemed...
Are you saying we're biased? Rightfully so, by the way, but...
We are. I mean, also,
we're going to protect our own.
By the statistical nature of what was recorded by our expert and esteemed Lega Serie B officials, there were 20 fouls committed by Genoa players to the 16 committed by Reggina players. Granted, again, we saw 10 of them before Hernani's card in the 41st minute. So I think Jeremy Menes's card in the 41st minute. Hernani did also get carded. I thought still you have a referee that needs to take control of the situation. He doesn't take control of the situation. As the match went on, you continued to see tempers flaring and different things happening, and in the end,
and I'm sorry, that's the ref's job, right? He's supposed to do his job in order for that not to happen.
That is exactly right. So that's I think it's a very fair gripe. I don't know what any of the neutrals might have thought in watching this match, but at the end, I think you expect a referee to be controlling what's happening in that instance. You don't want to see a referee influencing a match. At least we didn't really maybe necessarily exactly see that, but it did seem that there was a certain kind of dynamic to this game that definitely could have gone in a couple of different ways, and I thought that the referee could have maybe stopped that from happening. And thankfully, in the end, no one got hurt apart from Bonnie, that was not a dirty play. I don't think that Bonnie was out. That those things happen. There's collisions.
It happens.
It's there. Nothing there was there.
Nothing was malicious.
No, and even with me bitching about Pippo's mentality and his tactics, I think at the end of the day, he was probably shrewd in what he decided to do. And again, there was nothing. You don't have a moment like there's a famous moment with Arsenal fans with I think it was Shawcross had a tackle on Aaron Ramsey, like literally like broke his leg. None of those. It wasn't like that. We weren't watching that type of a match. But at the end, you still expect a referee to control the game, to make decisions, and to say, hey, we are not going to allow this type of play style in what I'm officiating over. And we just didn't see that. And that was the disappointing thing as a fan, because you want this game to be going in a way and to not kind of have a boiling over point. Unfortunately, in the end, there was a bit of that at the very end of the match, literally in extra time. And Storaro was the casualty in that instance. But I guess, like, whatever. We ended up still 1-0. We ended up with the win. None of this ended up costing us. We didn't have any, like, strength.
And that amazing save by, I think, even though he's not much utilized with respects to saves, like, not utilized because he does do his great saves, but that great save of Martinez at the end showed not only Reggina to be there, but also to have a great goalie.
It was a massive save. And I was happy to see, and like you and I both participate. I know some of the other folks on the We Are Genoa group chat participate too in the Genoa and Resta player ratings. They happen each week. We're happy to do that. It was great to see Martinez was by far away the most voted player. If you look at, wherever you like to get your star ratings or something, he was also the man of the match, and at least in terms of rating, Fatmam has him at 8.5. He had that massive save. Also, I think it's worth noting, though, like, as you mentioned, accurate passes. This is something that you're not always expecting from a goalkeeper. I'm not exactly sure comparing Martinez to Colombi is what we want to do, but when you consider 75% accurate passes for Martinez, 44% accurate long balls, Colombi had 57% accurate passes, 24% accurate long balls. And also, when you look at the volume of those, they were much more in Martinez's favor in terms of the amount of times he was both passing the ball and distributing those long balls. And to see him still be, in a level of accuracy that I think is pretty significant is commendable. And then you add in the fact that he had an actual, like, literal match-saving save that he made at the end of the game. Just phenomenal from him. And it's who would have thought that we would have had this gem of a player? I think we have to tip our cap a little bit to Spurs on this one, because I think we all thought we had our keeper settled before Martinez even arrived, and we just assumed this guy was the number 2. But he's clearly played all season like a player that deserves a lot more attention.
Absolutely. And I think this will be a topic for us to talk about after the end of the season with respects to he is on a player on loan, but I think we have the right to buy if we do get promoted for him. But there's a few other ones on top of him that we will be talking about. There's one more instance of that great refereeing that we had today that I wanted to talk about. And essentially, it all starts from an action that was on the Reggina side, where defender missed the ball. Goodmanson, the amazing guy we know, kind of stole that ball, curved a little bit on the right or on the left side of the goalie, had a great kick, which was a great save on the goalie on the Reggina side.
It should be said, for the gripes that Dan, I think, rightfully had about the keeper situation, I thought Colombi actually had a decent match.
I think so too. Like, to your point, he played it as one of the worst goalies of the league, but I think at least in this match, he showed to be the best player for Reggina.
He had a good,
After that shot that was saved by Goodmanson, Ekubans arrives and gets the ball a little bit on the opposite side of where Goodmanson was, kicks it. Very difficult. I think it did go to VAR. Very difficult to understand, but I'm claiming it to be a penalty that was missed. What do you think?
I didn't see it as much that way, to be honest. I thought that.
So essentially what happens is, based on what Ekuban is saying, it because the angles, and it was so fast and the angles were not super clear, that when Ekuban kicks it, it goes in between of the legs of the player who was falling. He was putting the hand down in order not to have, like, I guess, his face against the grass, and the ball touches his hand. And then it goes out on the side.
I can understand why people might want to see this given, but I also feel that maybe I'm also biased from normally playing in the defensive part of the pitch. But I think you have to let players have that happen. You're going to slide, you're going to fall. These things are going to happen occasionally. You're going to try to make a play. His hand might have coming down when he hit the ground when he was making the slide tackle. And it's definitely possible that, like, yes, Ekuban playing the ball in, hit his hand when it otherwise would have perhaps been a shot on target. But I really think that sometimes this stuff happens. I don't know what the definition is exactly, but I've heard sometimes people say like a natural footballing play. I think this qualifies. I think it's a soft penalty to give, in my opinion. You can understand contact with the hand and something that happens there and that type of a thing, but this isn't a guy sticking his. It's not Luis Suarez in the 2010 World Cup. This is a guy making a slide tackle, and it just happened to be that when he was going to ground, the ball and his hand kind of were in that place. He wasn't even having his arm outstretched. It was actually pretty close to his body. So
I agree with you. I wanted to point this out based on the fact that Pippo Inzaghi is claiming for a penalty that I don't even know what match he was looking at. There's a missed penalty for Reggina.
Yeah, whatever, people like.
Whatever, people, I like that. So a couple more things, then we'll go to the next match day and what our predictions are. What I wanted to open up, points gained by Genoa in 2023 brings them to the lead with only 1 point to Südtirol. So in the 2023 calendar year, Genoa has made more points thanks to the win against Reggina. And another interesting thing about Genoa is Genoa has the lead on the amount of fans going on away games, with averaging over 1,000. And keep that in mind, that only based on the fact that there's a lot of little stadiums in Serie B. Otherwise, that would have been a lot more. So that's just nice to hear, as our Grifoni fans are going enthusiastic more and more and more, even not only to the Temple, but also to other stadiums as well. Last but not least, before we get into match day 32, is tomorrow on Thursday. It's the semi-final of the Coppa Italia Primavera. It'll see Genoa Primavera against Fiorentina, and that'll be the semi-final. So match day 32. We have a few quite interesting matches that you are actually talking about. First of all, all the matches are going to be played on Easter Monday. Benevento Spal, mid-lower table, important for Spal, trying to make up a little bit of momentum there. Reggina Venezia, which just comes from a win finally for them against Perugia today, being that we're recording today on Wednesday, against Venezia. So Reggina plays at home against Venezia. That will be an interesting one, both for Reggina, but also for Venezia.
Yep.
Cittadella Parma. The yo-yo team is going to the Tombolato in Cittadella. Cittadella in need of points, but Parma is right there also waiting to get some points to the playoffs. Perugia Modena just lost. It'll be also the next opponent right after Como. It's going to be playing at home against Modena. Como Genoa. So that's the one that we're going to be. We haven't talked too much about it. Mm-hmm. Como is in that mid-table. We didn't know really what they were supposed to be doing based on the new ownership and Fabregas being there and so on. They kind of were a little bit on the lower tone type of season, but they're still that team that is a little bit difficult to play against, I guess, right?
Yep.
Then we have Frosinone Ascoli. Frosinone will have our eyes on you. Ascoli is one of those teams that it's hard to play against. It'll be one of our next opponents as well, but they're playing in Frosinone, so I don't expect too many miracles happening, but you never know. Next match, super match, I guess, of match day 32 will be Südtirol Bari. It is huge. This is the spot for the third spot at Südtirol, so up in Bolzano. Bari visiting the Südtirol Miracle Cinderella Dream, and let's see how that turns out. Brescia Ternana, the next matchup. That'll be quite important for Brescia to gain points. Ternana are sitting a little bit behind on the playoffs, but nevertheless, it's still not too late to say anything. Pisa Cagliari, I think, is another quite important one. Pisa to regain a little bit of that momentum within the table, as we mentioned before, but also Cagliari needs those points as they are aiming for that second apparent spot. Last but not least, Palermo just dropped out of the playoffs area. Will be playing at home against Cosenza. So they're not too far between the two teams. But nevertheless, it's important for them to try to get the points, but especially also for Cosenza, trying to keep that momentum in order to stay afloat and perhaps even perhaps avoid those playouts, which is important as well. Last but not least, predictions. So how do you see next match coming in, Matt?
Well, again, this is another important match, as everyone really from now on is going to be. As you mentioned, like Como's kind of a weird team to think about how we're going to line up against them. Their form has been, I think, like good, not great. Their most recent match was a loss. Before that, they were coming on 4 matches with either, 4 matches unbeaten, essentially 2 wins, 2 draws. One of them being of those wins against Modena, another of those wins actually being a 2-0 win against Parma. To your point, Parma's kind of been unpredictable, but we know a talented side. And so this was a Como team that can maybe get a result. I think that, we're going to expect, again, probably more of the same from Genoa and how we're going to approach this match. To your point, we are playing on April 10th for folks was expecting to watch in the US around 9 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, and you can watch via Hellbiz if you're in the States. I think this is one.
F that, buddy. F that.
Yeah. Yeah. If you live in Canada like Fabry, you have no absolute shot of watching this game at all. But come over to just drive a couple miles south, man. We've got like match highlights. We've got the extended full replays. We've got some great like TV presenters too that give it the and everything.
With a scooter TV.
Oh yeah. Yep. That's right. Hellbiz, if anybody has not tried this out yet, Hellbiz is like this crazy company that somehow they have like electric scooters in, I don't know if they're in the US, but I think for sure like in Europe. And then they also just have like a streaming business randomly. And the streaming business, like you actually have to go to 2 different sites. You have to go to Hellbiz Live to watch Serie B. But if you type in hellbiz.com, they're going to sell you on a bunch of electric scooters. So I guess teach them. But I think this match will end similarly, actually, to how we played against Reggina. I think it will be 1-0 to Genoa. I think the game will be harder to come by maybe than our Genoa fans might think that it will be, knowing where Como are in the table. Again, to your point, look, when you look at this, you look at the match day 32. So Como are sitting in 12th place on 39 points. As you rightly mentioned, they are 3 points away from Palermo, who have kind of a tricky match of their own against Cosenza at the weekend. They're a point behind Ternana, who have what you think is going to be a winnable game against Brescia. They are level with Modena, who have maybe a sneaky difficult match against Perugia. They're not that far, we should say, from being in the playoff promotion play-in places. Parma sitting at 8th or on 44 points. And as you mentioned, they played Cittadella, who are difficult. Reggina, who are on 45 points. You probably expect them to beat Venezia, but Venezia is a really good side, and that's their opponent this week as well. So all of a sudden, if Como get this result, they're going to be within one more win of being where Reggina are, and they potentially are that much closer. Reggina, by the way, are staying on 7th spot. So this is a match that I think they're going to take very seriously. We're not at that stage of the season at all yet, where teams are going to be kind of calming down and everyone's got their places consolidated. There's way too much happening in the Serie B table for that to happen right now. And I think we're going to have a harder time going. Remember, we are traveling and we're going to be playing at Como, kind of a weird ground, beautiful location. I actually like watching some of the cameras when you see the ground there, but I know, not as infamous otherwise. And so I think it'll be an interesting match, but I predict probably 1-0 to Genoa. Remember, again, for anyone feeling a little bit extra confident, the first part of this fixture back in November, we ended with a 1-1 draw at home. Obviously, different era, different manager, but still wasn't a side we were able to really easily break down.
I'm going to take it a little bit differently. So while I do agree totally with who's the goal scorer, sorry, on your side?
I think the goal scorer is going to be, I have us going in 0-0 at the break, and our famous Caleb Ekuban, I think, is going to get on the goal sheet.
All right. I think that while I do agree with everything that you said about Como, they are in a mediocre form for them anyways. I can look at their last 3 matches at home, other than the win against Cosenza, which seemed like a little bit of a fluke on the Cosenza side, winning 5-1. There was a 1-0 win against Modena and 2 win against Parma. So you would think it is a difficult match to go in. You're right, Como is not that easy, even though Frosinone did have a win 2-0 against them at Como. But other than that, Como, it's one of those weird sides where it's tough. But my point to here was we're in the last stretch. The next 3 games are going to be opening up what is going to have us for the end of the season. So Como, Perugia, and Cittadella on the paper, the most easy. I shouldn't say easy because it's not fair when you talk about City B, but on the paper compared to our form, compared to on the paper who squad and the actual, the players it can look like compared to the other ones are the ones that I'm not saying that have to come out with the 9 points, but we have to go there with that mentality of a bigger team in order to get as much points as possible and to qualify for that top 2 spots. I think it's not going to be necessarily an easy match itself, but I do think it's going to come out with a win. I'm thinking about a 2-0. I do want to see, of course, Ekuban, but I also think that it's going to be another goal by Coda. So Coda and Caleb.
Massimo Coda.
We'll finally get to the double digit and a goal just to silence a little bit of those fans that are thinking that he is not quality material even for next year in the event of a promotion. I think we're at a wrap. So this was episode 46, closer to the big 5-0.
That's unbelievable.
Incredible. Send us comments, send us messages. Let us know if you want to be part of our amazing and thriving English chat that we have going on WhatsApp. We've had a few new entries coming in. You can find us on big social medias anyways. So that's Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Drop us a like, send comments, and share those pages also with whomever you think might be interested. Having said that, never forget, always and forever, Forza Genoa. You've listened to La Lanterna, a spotlight on Italian football, a podcast powered by Genoani Si Resta. Thank you for listening and see you next week.